Welcome everyone to a particularly sadistic member request video, one which I was honestly kinda dreading making, but I'm a man of my word, and so I present to you one of the most infamously terrible vehicles in the entire game, the F-104S. For those of you who are familiar with the ancient past of this channel, and by that I mean like a few months ago, you will know that I am not just a casual F-104 disliker, but rather I am a die-hard F-104 hater. I hate fighting it, I hate playing it, and its safety record in real life doesn't really impress me very much either. For my 100 and 500 subscriber specials, I did stock grinds of two particularly awful variants of this aircraft, the J and the Taiwanese G, but the S variant adds a whole new layer of suck into the equation, because despite being a higher BR than some of the other variants, you have to choose between the gun and the radar missiles. You cannot take both. Honestly, the cop-out way to do this video would have been to just run the gun and 6 Sidewinders and try to kill A-10s in the back of the pack, which is how I normally play the F-104s to be honest, but I felt like that would be against the spirit of this request, so instead, we're running no guns and AIM-7Es. Let me explain why this is not ideal. First off, as you can probably guess from its stubby little emu wings, the F-104 cannot turn for shit. Dogfighting of any kind is just pretty much straight up a no-go, so you're going to have to get pretty creative trying to get a firing solution on anyone who isn't actively distracted. And you might think, well, at least that means it doesn't bleed a lot of energy, right? Well, you would be wildly incorrect. The F-104 has abysmal energy retention too. Trying to do a full 180-degree turn is going to almost totally deplete you of energy, so if you miss a shot and overshoot, well, sucks to be you. And then there are the weapons. The AIM-9Gs are an overall okay weapon, but they work particularly poorly on the 104S due to the fact that they only pull 20 Gs, are rear aspect only, and they don't have particularly impressive range. Combined with the F-104S's, to be charitable, rather limited ability to maneuver, this is going to result in you having to contend with an extremely limited firing window in order to use these, since for a solid shot, someone will have to be pointed away from you, but also be relatively close by. And then there are the AIM-7Es. Not the E2s, mind you, just the regular 7Es. These missiles pull a rather decent 25 Gs. The problem is that they have a guidance delay of 1.8 seconds. Considering it only has a 2.8 second burn time, this means that it will be flying unguided for about 2/3 of the time it's picking up speed. As a result of this, it's very important that you actually aim it at the enemy as if you were firing an unguided rocket at them, otherwise it will just bleed out most of its energy trying to turn onto the target. These 7Es are paired with a radar, which is surprisingly not terrible. It doesn't have pulse Doppler, but it still seems to hold lock pretty well and does a decent job of filtering chaff and ground clutter, but it has two very big problems that will limit how you can use it. First off is the fact that the search scale is locked at 90 degrees. Why that's a problem is that reducing the radar search scale can allow you to lock people faster who are directly in front of you, which is why I like to set it to 30 or 40 degrees most of the time if possible. Some of you who have taken a closer look at this aircraft may be wondering why exactly that matters, since it has an ACM mode which should allow you to easily lock people right off your nose. Well, the ACM mode only has a range of 4 kilometers, and since your Sparrows have such a long guidance delay, this makes it basically useless in most situations. The only piece of good news I have for you in terms of this aircraft's specs is that it does get an uprated engine, earning it the moniker of Super Starfighter, so its flight characteristics are going to be slightly less awful than you're used to if you've played other variants of the Starfighter. So now, on to the question you've all been wondering: how do you play this thing? Well, given the Starfighter's many terrible attributes, it's easy to forget that it does anything particularly well, but there is one thing it's known for being good at, and that is, of course, speed. In AirRB, this speed is often only really useful for running away, but it does have one application which can allow for it to actually earn you consistent kills, which basically just involves using this interceptor as an interceptor. I know, revolutionary stuff. Basically, right at the start of the match, you're going to want to fly on full afterburner while climbing at 5 degrees straight towards the enemy spawn point. You're going to be able to outrun basically anything else in the air, and as a result, you will very often arrive well before they expect anyone to be able to. To be clear, the intention here is not to set yourself up to engage in BVR. You could do this by climbing up to high altitude, but you would be massively outranged by R-24s and more advanced Sparrow variants if you did this. Instead, the intent is to get right up in the enemy's face at extremely high speed and blindside them with your radar missiles. The E-Sparrow is pretty limited in terms of range, but 10 kilometers seems to be a fine engagement distance most of the time. This may sound like a pretty risky and desperate way to fight, but surprisingly, I find this will result in you getting at least 1 kill per match easily 90% of the time, and sometimes you may get multiple enemies this way if there are more than one of them not paying attention. The absolute easiest targets will be people who have climbed up into space if you can pull up underneath them, since it's going to be far more difficult for them to dodge these missiles kinematically up high in that thinner air. Once you get this initial 1, maybe 2 kills, I'm not going to get your hopes up that you're going to get very many more than that, but generally your best option at this point is going to be to look for big furballs on the deck and try to pick people off with your sidewinders if possible. Like I mentioned earlier, these sidewinders are going to be of limited utility here due to their rather limited range and the fact that they're rear aspect only, but against relatively slow targets like A-10s and F-5Cs, which this BR range is absolutely filled to the brim with, they can work okay. Also, even though the energy retention on this aircraft is absolute ass cheeks, you can still kinda boom and zoom by going vertical and coming back down on top of people. Very few aircraft around this BR are going to be able to keep up with you doing it like that. Maybe MiG-23s, but if anyone does follow up behind you, you have countermeasures at least. And that's my best attempt to devise some sort of workable strategy for this thing. Honestly, this was really not as bad as I was expecting, but that's more due to the fact that so many people around this BR lack any sort of situational awareness rather than this aircraft actually being any good. If you're looking at this as an option to grind out Italy, yeah, it's actually pretty brain-dead easy to use, but personally, I enjoy actually dogfighting, which this aircraft will absolutely not allow you to do, so I would personally just wait for the MiG-29 Sniper to go on sale and fly that instead. Anyways guys, just a quick reminder that if you have a vehicle you want to see me cover, or want to have input on which vehicles I cover in future episodes, please consider taking a look at my channel's membership program for these and some other perks, as it really helps me out quite a lot. Otherwise, check out the playlist in the description for more similar content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.